All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to week 7 of our Q&A. My name is Brian McLogan, and we're going to work through some 5 examples that students have submitted into me to kind of work through. So we're going to do a little wide range of some topics here that have been submitted. And by the way, just a reminder, if you would like to have a question kind of answered by me on my weekly live stream, then feel free just to make sure you're following my community post. I can't always guarantee when exactly I'm going live. I try to do these on Sunday nights, but sometimes that gets pushed to a Monday night. But I always try to get the live stream. At least my goal is to get it announced 8 hours in advance. So as long as you're on the channel and kind of looking at my community post, you'll see throughout the weekend a little update from me letting you know when exactly I'm going to plan on going live. And then you can respond with those questions. One of the issues, though, that I have been having a little bit, I've received a lot of questions, which is great, but it's just been a lot of general questions, and that's not wrong in regular respects to answer questions like how to do this or, explain this topic. But just for the sake of the live streams and to make sure this is the most efficient kind of live stream as far as me going through problems, I prefer just to kind of work on specific problems. And obviously, if you want me to elaborate on some processes, some general concepts off of those problems, then I'm more than happy to do that. But the more specific, like for instance, you can see it's very easy for me to write down, all right, find f of 3 for this recursive formula. Or in this example, figuring what happens with the profit when we have some changes in the sales and the discount. Here we're looking into finding the derivative using the chain rule. Simplifying, some very, and then I think the last one is, so then we evaluate. So I'm given f of x and g of x. And, typically what I'll get is students will say, well, do, composite functions, or, I don't know how to do composite functions. Well, this is very detailed and it's very easy for me to go off of. So the more specific you can be when you are submitting me questions, the better. Because basically I, reply back to a lot of students on the community tab being like, give me something more specific, like what do you mean, what types of problems? Because obviously if you ask me to graph like linear inequalities, I can spend 20-30 minutes talking about linear inequalities. I also have tons of videos on talking about linear inequalities or systems of equations or all that kind of stuff. So I want to make sure that obviously I know that content's available on my website and other people's channels, but I just want to make sure that when I'm doing these live streams and when I start going through these questions that I am addressing exactly where your issue is, because just talking about a concept or just answering a specific question or making up my own problems, I don't think is always going to be the best way to handle exactly what you're looking at. So those are just kind of some quick little add-ins for you guys. So I just wanted to make sure that my stream life is going down. Sorry about that, guys. Not sure why my output is so low, but it looks like everything's still going through. So as long as you guys, let me know if there's anything else, or if it does have an issue, let me know. I'm not sure why the stream is getting so down, but it looks like everything else is fine. So all this, I guess I'll just kind of play within here. So Anthem with Super Chat. Well, thank you very much. $3.57. You're awesome to keep it up. Well, thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. And I do see a lot of you guys are getting in your questions. So I'm also getting into the questions that you guys are obviously see that I went live, and that's great. I'm more than happy to help you guys out with some of those questions. I'm not sure how many of the extra questions I'll be able to get to. I do typically only like to do the live streams, here just for 30 minutes. For on there. So we'll just kind of see how fast these go. And then obviously if I have some questions, I will see if I can help any of you guys out with that. So, but definitely a lot of you guys, the Kitty Gamer, good to see you again. D'Angelo, I'm right here. Hope the live stream is going all right. Big Boy, yes. Danielle, Bo Rerun, Sharif, good to see you guys. Landu, Andrew, Yairo, Connor, Tom, Hyro, Enzo. Awesome. Well, sweet. A lot of people are on the live stream. That's awesome. All right. So what I'm going to do is let me go and knock through these questions then. And then what I'll do is I'll come back to you guys in the chat and kind of see if there's any other topics that I might be able to address for you. you know, I kind of feel like I might want to get my Ethernet cord back through there. I'm just going to plug this back in just in case. Just make sure that I have this in. All right, therefore I have a little bit of a backup just in case my internet is being a little funky for it. All right, so sweet. All right, guys, I will. I'll go back and check in back with you guys for there, and then or check back with you guys in the chat. And then also another thing, also, you know, I kind of noticed as I do read through back the chat, kind of see how you guys, you know, other questions that maybe I missed after I'm done with the live stream. But I do appreciate it. Obviously, you guys know I'm going to spend about the next 15 minutes teaching. And obviously, people are going to come in. They're going to ask questions. Any of you guys that are in on the chat that can help other people out, I greatly appreciate it. Or if you know, a link to my videos or somebody else's videos, you know, that can help them, that can, you know, that will teach them exactly what they're looking for, that you're aware of, you know, feel free to share that. I really do appreciate you guys helping that out, because obviously as I'm getting to now the teacher mode, I'm not going to be able to get right in with the chat with you guys. But I will make sure I come back before I close the stream to maybe just kind of, you know, check in with you guys, see if there's any other questions I can teach. Help you out with. All right, so, you know, first kind of question is just dealing with the, let's kind of go through it one more time. We're going to do recursive formula. We're going to do some sales. And then we're going to do the derivative with the chain rule. We're going to simplify with complex numbers. And then we're going to do composition of functions. All right, so all right, so the first thing, the recursive formula, and really the main thing to remember with the recursive formula is you're taking the previous term and plugging that in. So I think it's fine figuring us to find f of 3. Now we know what f of 1 is. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out what f of 2 is. Right, so we want to go all the way up to 3. So the important thing about recursive formula is just kind of following in with the pattern. So f of 2 would be, now we're just going to replace all the n's with 2. So this would be f of 2 minus 1, all divided by 2, plus 5. Well, f of 2 minus 1 is f of 1 divided by 2 plus 5. We saw that f of 1 is actually equal to 5, so that's going to be 5 halves plus 5. Now, obviously, in this case, we need to be able to get common denominators. So I'm going to go ahead and just show my work here. To get common denominators, I'm going to multiply by 2 over 2. So I'm going to change the 5 with the denominator of 2, which would be 10 halves. And that would give me 15 halves. So therefore, f of 2 equals 15 halves. So now if I want to figure out what f of 3 is, again, you're going to follow the same idea, but now in this case, I think we can understand this is really just going to be f of 3 minus 1, which is f of 2, divided by 2. Okay, now f of 2 is obviously 15 halves. Now this All right, well, I'm just going to go ahead and continue because it does seem like it still is shooting through. So I do apologize if you guys having a little issues with the audio or with the kind of maybe the clarity of the video output. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue working through on this, and then I'll just have to go ahead and kind of see where the issue is on another after this. So therefore I have 15 halves divided by 2. Again, dividing by 2 is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So that's going to really be 15 fourths plus 5. And then basically now I can add 15 fourths. I can change this to the 5 to be a denominator of 4. So I'd multiply by a 4 over 4. So this would be a 15 fourths plus 20 over 4, which equals a 35 over 4. So therefore f of 3 is going to equal 35 over 4. Yeah, stream seems pretty good. Oh, okay. Well, as long as it's coming through on you guys, all right. That's awesome. So I usually never get a live stream with a red kind of circle. Usually you want green, and obviously sometimes yellow will happen. But in this case, it looks like it's red, so it looks like it's giving me low output. But as long as it's coming through for you guys, awesome. All right, so the next one was a little different. It was a little odd as far as what we were trying to identify something like, 10% sale on pens, and then that produces like a 20% increase in sales. Sales by 20%, what happens to the profit? Now, obviously, profit is going to be, the revenue minus the expenses. The problem doesn't really make any reference to the profit or the revenue or the expenses. It just really talks about you have a 10% sale. So obviously, you're taking the amount of money, whatever money you're making on that profit. When you have a 10% sale, you're reducing like that. You're not going to take 10% in less. And then but since you're lowering the price, more people want that. And therefore you can see the sales are going to increase by 20%. So the way that at least I read the problem, or at least understood the problem that was presented to me, was, like, let's say you have the profit, and we're just going to take profit as revenue, forget about the expenses, whatever the profit is, whatever the revenue is, that's going to be already minus expenses. So if I have, the profit here, and this is just going to be from the cost of what things are, or what we originally were selling them for. If you have a 10% sale, so a way to look at that is, actually do this. Be prevalent minus that 10%. Yeah. So if you're taking a 10% off, you're basically only selling something for 90% of the value, right? So instead of getting like 100% of the sale, you're really only getting, 90%. And I'm just going to call this R for like revenue. So you're really only getting, 90%. And then the other profit, though, in terms of this was, well, if you're making a 20% increase, you're basically saying you're getting, 100% of the revenue, plus now you're getting a 20% increase, more revenue, right? So originally you had this different R that you were selling things and you weren't getting the same amount. Obviously, you're getting less of the amount, but you're also getting a 20% increase. Now, how do we relate? Do we just like, and then this can be also related to as far as a 1.20 R, okay? And so basically, how do we relate to is, do we add these together? Like what exactly we're doing? And really what you want to do is we're going to be using a composition of functions here. You're basically getting a 120% increase on a 90% of the revenue, or in the profit in this case. So basically what you're going to do is you're basically composing these functions. So 1.20 times 0.990 R. And I believe what that gave me was an 8% increase. Yeah. Let me see. Now I'm going to have to go back to my computer because my thing died. Where'd it go? Okay. So 1 times 0.90. Hey, you showed back up. What's up with that? Yeah, so now when I multiply those, you can see that's giving me a 1.08 R. So therefore, what that's going to do is that's going to give me a 8% increase, right? Because it's above 1. So therefore, we know that it's above 100%. It's an increase, not a decrease, and therefore 0.08 is going to be 8% is the increase. So there you go. So it's not a 10% increase, but it's a little bit less because you are not taking in as much money. All right, the next one is find the derivative chain rule. So it's been a while, but I looked at this one and I'm like, all right, I'm pretty sure I remember both the things, or both of this. So just remember when you're doing the derivative that we're going to take the derivative of 2x, these two quantities separately. Since they're separated by addition, we can do that. The first one, we're just going to use the power rule. We're going to take the power and multiply it by the coefficient, which is going to be 4. And then we're going to subtract the powers, which would be 1. So that will just be as 4x. Now, the next one is, basically understanding how to do the chain rule here, because this is like really our kind of understanding here. And actually, did I not write like the composition? Yeah, I did. I kind of plugged that in for that. All right. So what we need to do is we need to kind of understand there's two functions that are going on here. Let's say g of x is x squared, and f of x is 3x plus 1. Now, it's nice that I'm going to be doing a composition of functions next, because you can see that really what this is g of f of x, right? We are plugging f of x, we're plugging this function into that function. That's how we get that function, 3x plus 1 squared. Okay, so when you're doing the chain rule, the basic idea that you want to know is, well, you want to be able to understand, obviously, what are the two functions, which function is being plugged into the other function, as well as what is the derivative of each of those. So that's 2x, and f prime of x is just going to be 3. So making sure that we understand the derivative. So basically what we're going to do is you are going to take the chain rule is going to be, in this case, let's see. So if you have something, you have g of f of x in this composition. So we typically, instead of using the g of f of x like we use in pre-calculus or algebra 2, we're going to want to use that formation. And so if I wanted to take the derivative, we're going to take the derivative of the outside, still plug in the original function, and then we're going to multiply that by the derivative of the inside function. So the derivative of the outside function, which is x squared, is going to be 2. But instead of x, we're going to plug back in f of x, which is 2x or 3x plus 1. And then we're going to multiply that by the derivative of 3x plus 1, which is 3. And now we can just go ahead and simplify this to give me a 4x. 2 times 3 is going to be 6. And then obviously we can continue simplifying this. Let's see, that'd be an 18x plus 6. And that would be a 22x plus 6. Okay, so that's basically the kind of the same idea. And again, you guys can see as I went through one problem, but I kind of went through at least a little bit of summary of the chain rule. So therefore, you can apply it for any other problem. All right, the next one is simplifying with complex numbers. Without getting in too much detail of basically that, we can talk about our imaginary unit, I equals the square root of -1. So therefore, if we were to square, if we're going to multiply then by I on both sides, so we know I is equal to the square root of -1, right? So if we square both sides, well, obviously the square root or squaring of negative square root, you're going to see that I squared is equal to -1. Okay, now if we were to multiply I times, that's I squared. If we were to multiply by I on both sides now, then we would get -1 times I. So therefore, I cubed is equal to -I. And if you were to multiply by I again, one more time, I cubed is equal to, times I. And then here we'd have a -I times I. So therefore, this is going to give us I to the 4th is equal to a -I squared. Well, I squared again is equal to -1. Negative times -1, I squared, you can see, or I to the 4th is equal to 1. Now, that's 1. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this information here and kind of write a nice little list. So I, kind of to the first power, right, you can think about that, is going to be the basically equal to the square root of -1 or just equal to itself, which is I. I squared is going to be equal to -1. I cubed is equal to -I. I to the 4th is going to be equal to 1. All right, and what happens is if you keep on following that pattern, you're going to recognize this repeats. So the interesting thing here is, I to the 45th, basically what we're asking ourselves is like, what is then the power? Like, is it 1, 2, 3, or 4? And, for instance, let's just do I to the 9th, okay? Well, obviously we have 4. Like, 4 goes in there once, and then if you went to 8, that would be 2 rounds. And then if we do 9 would be like I to the 1st, like the remainder. So basically what you can do is you can do 9 divided by 4, and whatever the remainder is, that's going to obviously be the power. You're not going to have 4 as the remainder because that means it divide back evenly. But you're either going to have 1, 2, or 3, or it evenly divides. So 9 divided by 4 is going to be 2 with the remainder of 1. And that's why it's I to the, it would just be I. So that's going to be equal to I, because it has a remainder of 1. So I look at 45, and all you really got to do for any of these is just take 45 or whatever your number is and divide it by 4. And we obviously know that 4 times 10 is 40. do another round of 4s would be 44. So therefore, I to the 45th is the same thing as I to the first, which is just I. Okay. The next one is just multiplying binomials. And, here we can just do distributive property or FOIL. The really only interesting thing here is when we're multiplying with i's, we're going to get an I squared. So we're going to want to simplify that. So 7 times 5 is 35. 7 times 2i is going to be a 14i. 3i times 5 is going to be a positive 15i. And 3i times 2i is going to be a positive 6i squared. And just remember that I, again, guys, we can treat that like a variable, even though it's not a variable, but you're combining like terms. You have 14i and 15i, you can combine those. So therefore, this becomes a 35 plus a 29i, and this would be a plus a 6. Now remember, I squared is negative 1. So that's going to turn into a negative. I'm just showing my work here because sometimes I like force myself to. So I get a negative 6, and then 35 minus 6 is going to be a 29. So now typically you could factor out an a, you could factor out a 29, but complex numbers in our form typically are used in the a plus bi. So I would just leave it into that format, or at least that is considered, our kind of like standard form for a complex number. All right, last but not least here is evaluating the compositions of functions. So we have f of g of x, g of f of x, and f of g of x. And if you don't like this notation, you can see in calculus that we obviously went through that notation. We used this notation, and we did this notation. Okay, so they really represent the same thing. I do sometimes like actually writing this. It is a little bit easier to write it and then not miss some parentheses. But as far as understanding what you're supposed to be doing, obviously the composition like this is going to be the preferred method. So when you write it like this is basically saying just take the g of x function and plug it in to the f of x function, right? So we have f of x, which is 1. All right, so that's going to equal. So we're going to take the g of x function. So really it's going to look like this, plus, and you plug the g of x in for the x, right? So it's really 1 plus g of x. Well, what is g of x? That's this square root, or square root of x minus 1. So therefore, that's going to be 1 plus the square root of x minus 1. And that's it. There's really nothing else we can kind of do with that. For the next one, we're going to take f of x, and we're going to plug it into g of x. So that would kind of look something like this. So we have the g of x function, and then we're going to plug f of x in for the x. Well, now f of x in this case is 1 plus x minus 1, and that just simples to the square root of x. And the last one is f of x, which is basically just plugging f of x into itself. So that'd be 1 plus, instead of g of x, in this case is going to be f of x. Well, f of x again is 1 plus x, so therefore that can simplify into 2 plus x. And there you go, ladies and gentlemen. We are now finished with those 5 problems. So again, I do appreciate for those of you that took the time to submit some questions, and I know there was a whole bunch of you that also submitted some questions that I didn't get to. I try to stay away from the word problems just because it takes too much time to write it, too much time for me to talk about it. I want to try to keep things as quick as I can, and so therefore, I'm trying to avoid general process videos or concept videos. If you want me to explain a process or a concept based off of a problem, then that's a different thing. Make sure you guys go ahead and send those over to me on the next chat, because obviously, as you guys can see, once this live stream starts going, I just get flooded with questions, and obviously I could hang out with you guys all night and be doing math problems, which wouldn't be a problem, except I got to go back to school tomorrow and teach, like my normal job. So therefore, I cannot do that, but it would be awesome if I could. And because I see you guys have a ton of questions in here, and I really do appreciate you guys kind of join in. I don't even think I can go back to my original thing. I'm like, oh man, wow, you guys have just been doing an awesome job adding into the chat. So, whew, man, cool thing. Jeez, that's cool, awesome. So I definitely see you guys. BMVS, Muhammad, Landon, Butterslice, Colin, Diminez, Hayat, good to see you guys. And yeah, I know you guys have a lot of questions. That's That's awesome. And I do apologize, guys. There's no way I'm going to be able to get to any of these. And then, so my such question, how can I ask you the question? So, I do apologize, guys. I know a lot of you are not maybe even subscribed to my channel, or maybe you don't have the notifications, or you don't check, maybe like it's in your time frame right now. It's not time where 8 hours ago you're able to message me. So the best thing I can recommend to you guys is, obviously one, if you are kind of on the same time zones as myself, I try to always post to my streams at least 8 hours in advance. So therefore that gives you guys an opportunity to send me over some questions. However, if you're not within any near of my time zone and you have some questions that you'd like me to send, I'm not as active on my Facebook page, the free math videos, but I definitely still am my account and still have my Facebook that I do definitely still check in. So I'd recommend also, if you want to send me in those questions, preferably on those dates. If you send me in until like tonight or like tomorrow, like that's not a good idea, because I'm not going to get to anything until, Saturday or Sunday, typically mostly on the Sundays. So I would recommend, as we're getting to a live stream, you can obviously go ahead and submit those to me then. If there's like a picture, if you have a question, feel free to go ahead and send me to that as well. And then, so yeah, that's really just kind of the best way, because obviously I'm seeing you guys are throwing in some questions, and it's like, that's awesome. I wish I could kind of hang out and just go through some questions, but I know a lot of you guys, took a lot of time and put in some questions earlier, and that's why I wanted to make sure that I had enough time to kind of get through those. So for right now, I'm just going to avoid kind of the, oh, actually, you know what? There was another question. Hold on a second. Did I not write that one down? I'm sorry. There is one more question I was going to do. I have a quadrant one. Did I write 5 twice? I did. That's what I was thinking. Okay, so that's question number 6. All right, so I got one more question, and then that'll be it. I'll kind of go back maybe to see if there's any general questions, just because I'm not going to have time to go through the math questions, but if there's any other specific questions you guys had. So determine the quadrant, sine is greater than 0, and tangent of theta is -2, 3. All right, so to understand this question, I think the easiest thing to do is understand the quadrants, right? We obviously have quadrant 1, quadrant 2, 3, and 4. All right, and to understand we got to understand like the coordinate points, what they are for each quadrant. Okay, now if we go to our understanding of our points here, we know that, remember, sine of theta is equal to y, cosine of theta is equal to x, and tangent of theta is y over x. Now the problem is we don't know in this negative if the negative is a 2 or the negative is a 3, right? So we start with this one. Sine of theta has to be greater than 0. Okay, so that means that y has to be positive. So now we know that we're only working in quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. But if sine is large, it has to be positive. That means tangent is y over x. That means this has to be a positive 2 over -3, right? Because 2 has to be positive because it's larger than 0. So therefore I say, oh, so the y is 2 and the x is -3. Well, the only point where the y is positive and the tangent is negative is going to be in this example. And you could also, I could go elaborate a little bit more on this, but therefore the answer you guys can see is going to be quadrant 2. So hopefully that helps for you on there. It's 4:28 out here. So yeah, when I posted that question, it was only about 8 hours ago. So I do apologize, but I do appreciate you joining me. That's very early, man. Awesome. But I do appreciate you joining in on the live stream. And then, yeah, if you want to kind of plan, this time, this is when I'm going to be going live. And obviously I know if you're sleeping or whatever else, like somebody asked a question, they're like, I'm not going to be on the live stream because that's not a good time for me. But, here's my question. Can you answer it? And they gave me a specific question and I said, sure. So therefore I made sure that I answered that question. But when it's just like general questions, like find the derivatives or anything else, it's very difficult for me to understand what exactly you need. So to answer your question, I don't want to confirm where exactly my next live video is going to be. I plan on right now every week for Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. However, I don't want you to get mad at me if that doesn't happen this next week, because obviously life happens and I'm not always able to stay strictly on a schedule because, yeah, obviously, like, I just try to do this when I possibly can for you guys. It's fun for me as well, but I just want to give myself a little bit of flexibility as well. So therefore, you can plan on this exact same time next week, but and obviously I will be having a another community tab to make sure you're aware of, at least 8 hours in advance so you can see. So maybe before you head off to to bed, you can always make sure you check that or set the community tab to make sure it's there. All right, so I'm just going to kind of answer some general questions, see if you guys have for there. And unfortunately, guys, I know some of you are sending your questions, and I apologize. I just can't do any more math for tonight. But please make sure next stream, if you want to send me over to them, I'll be more than happy to do them. I have a test Wednesday on derivatives and calculus. Do you have any videos on your channel that can help me? Yeah, well, I hope so. I mean, I taught calculus. I taught 2 years of calculus, or at least Calc 1. So, I mean, I definitely have tons of videos on derivatives. I think I'm in a big playlist, so everything that you can do. So, hopefully you can check. So, yeah, just go to my channel page and look at the playlist, and you'll find stuff on calculus. Rahul says, sir, I'm from India. Sir, where are you from? Well, I am from Jacksonville, Florida, who actually won our football game tonight. So, it was a very, very good time to watch. So, it was awesome for them. But yeah, Jacksonville, Florida, United States. It's enjoy. I've been here for quite a few years now. Do you watch anime? No, I do not spend too much time watching anime, except for my children's anime, which I don't think would classify as the same anime you're referring to. But yeah, no, just most of my time is obviously with teaching and with my kids. Then obviously in trying to do, making some videos for online as well really takes up most of my time. All right. Hi, any questions on permutation combination? Not have time today. I'm a huge fan. That helped me out so much. Thank you. You saved me so many times. Well, Pine, you are very, very welcome. I'm very happy to be able to help you out. Keep working hard out there. McLogang, yeah, Jessica, yeah, I appreciate it. I take the ACT on Tuesday. Well, good luck, James. I hope you do the best you can do. I can't hang on the pre-calc now this year. I'm in calc. Well, good soda pop. Best of luck to you on calculus. I thought that's. Hope you do. Hope you do all right. I do have some videos on calculus that hopefully can help you out as well. And I think a lot of the things from pre-calculus you'll see that really builds on the calculus, obviously from the name pre-calculus. F of g of f of x. Again, BMVS is asking me for the composition. I'm not going to continue on with those compositions of functions, but if you have multiple compositions, just kind of work, again, that is the one composition. So if you need to compose that with something else, then plug something else into those compositions. So, you can continue, you can build upon these compositions, a composition on a composition on composition. Just work from the inside out. And that's kind of the best key I can give you, working from the inside out. And yeah, use a calculator. That's always my favorite question to give to students as well. Oh yeah, calculator. Or not even from calculator, but a lot of students even online, because we don't use the calculator mostly in my class, except for only a couple chapters in pre-calculus. But I think it's really important for students to be able to build that kind of numeracy and understand how, a lot of numbers, how they're related, how they work, and, their operations. Even though we know majority in real life, you're not going to be needing to do that many computational skills. I do also think it puts you at a good advantage, for further classes and just in real life to be able to have some of those basic skills, from there. Max says, how do you find the inverse of function without factoring? I'm not sure what you're referring to, but again, inverse, swap the x and y, solve, or you can look at the y equals x line. Can you get a linear and exponential equation from intersecting point? I'm not really sure what you're referring to. Can you get a linear and exponential equation from an intersecting point? Maybe could you write an equation from an intersecting point? Yes. Any point, I'm sure you can find a linear and exponential equation that would go through that same point. That's definitely possible. Just depends on really how advanced you need to get to those. Hi, Habib. How are you? Any advice on radicals? Yeah, Pine, I would say a lot of times, with radicals, when they get confusing, is, rewrite them as rational powers. I know that just meant I said use fractions, but I really do think when you're using the operation, or when you're, doing some operations with radicals, understanding them as rational powers does make things a little bit easier. Hi, Professor Blue. Hello. Do you play video games? I used to way back in my college days, but like I said, kind of with the timing, guys, I don't really get to that. Really don't get to that stuff anymore. Sometimes I play with my nephews, as well, when I get to go and see them. Obviously, they're much younger and they're like into all that, and I just don't have the time from there. And hi, Brian, can you give a geometry guide? I wish I could. I got to work. It's been a while since I taught in the geometry, and I'm trying to work my way back into doing some videos. So I don't have a geometry guide, but I can say that I'm trying to work in some extra videos every week from, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry. So, keep on looking out. I will be throwing some videos out there. And Anthony Pryor, how do you solve absolute value functions using limits? I don't recall from in there. To be honest with you, that's something I need to look at. So unfortunately, it's not something I'll be able to kind of go through with you, or at least in the live stream. I was in pre-calc last year. Lucas says, pre-calc / nominal in calculus 2. We are just learning about limits. Well, awesome, Lucas. Well, keep on going, man. It's a lot of fun. I mean, obviously, when the calculus, you get to the limits, derivatives, and basically the intervals, once you get those foundations, I think it's really awesome once you can start applying that, a lot of that stuff. You really see how calculus, kind of has its tentacles in so many different things. And really, it was after calculus that my eyes really started to open as far as, now I understand why all this stuff or crap that I was trying to learn that didn't make sense, now it was all starting to make sense. So I really do think it's important for a lot. I really do wish everybody had the opportunity to take calculus. I don't think it's necessary for everybody to take calculus, or at least a lot of the extremes that we teach it, not the extremes, but at least the capacity that we teach it. But I do think it would benefit a lot of people if they understood, they go through this whole schooling in mathematics and then they don't really get to see why that stuff is applied or how it's applied. It's kind of like learning an instrument, but then never really get to play any in the band at all. You're just kind of learning the basics of the stuff, but you never really get to see how the whole symphony, orchestra, band all plays together and really understands it. I don't know. I just kind of went off of that, but there's so much more to math and so many more things to understand. And, a lot that students only get to experience is, at least in the high school level, is just so little. Graph makes error, but what do you do when there's a number in front of the factors? All right, so Johnny, you're asking a very, very good question. This is something that I've covered. Actually, I'll have a video on that. That video is not coming out for a while, but so I really like that question, Johnny, and that's a really, really important one. And I'm actually going to spend some time answering it because it is one that gets to me so much with students. So your question was, if you have an equation, you understand how to graph something with end behavior. And this is something I come up in one of my longer videos. Like, we know that the graph, we know this is a quadratic, right? And therefore I have 1 and -2. Like, this graph is going to look something like this, right? And if we wanted to write this in factored form, we could just have this as x squared plus x minus 2, right? So that's the factored form, which we find the zeros. And that is the standard form. Now, obviously, I could raise the multiplicity here. I could put this 2, I could put that a 4, whatever else. Like, that's going to change the behavior. But your question was, well, what happens if I put like a 2 there or a 3 there? Like, what does that do? And again, like my question to you is, why don't you just multiply everything out? If you multiply all of this out, what you're going to get is 3x squared plus 3x minus 6. So again, and then if I said, hey, solve this, the first thing you do is factor out the 3, and then you would go ahead and factor. So the important thing, what's happening is this 3 is not changing the zeros. Like, when you set that equal to 0, and you go ahead and solve, the first thing you're going to do is divide out the 3, right? Because the 3 is what we call a scalar. It is not a 0. And again, just by, that this graph only has 2 x-intercepts. so it doesn't make sense for 3 to be a 0 or 3 to be an x-intercept, right? So the 3 is that vertical stretch. It is a scalar. So that's why it's a very important. So it's a really good questions, and that's why I just wanted to spend a little second on it. But then I see it's a big mistake because I got to end the stream for you guys, and I know there's so many questions you guys have for us. But thank you for asking that because I want to do it. All right, so I'm going to kind of roll through these questions real quick, kind of like a fire stream, guys, and then I got to go. I might be trying to do another live stream for this week, but if I do a live stream that week, it'll be an unannounced live stream and probably won't even be with questions asked. But I definitely will plan on being live next week, same time on Sunday. And just make sure you guys are checking in with the community tab because I'll make sure I post that in advance. So, all right. I cannot do that, Ryan, at least for now. I'm going to become a math teacher too. Awesome, Judd. Good for you, man. Keep it going. That's awesome. We need more good quality math teachers and people that are interested in the subject and helping others. I teach pre-calculus. I do not know what cobwebbing is, at least top of my head. Was your calculus teacher good? Yes, I would say that I felt that my calculus understanding benefited from having a teacher that was a good teacher and made an impact on my learning. So yes. Trig, we will be getting Trig, definitely. And do you have any PDF file about high school math? Yes, I'm not sure what you're asking, but as far as like a geometry stuff, I don't have anything as far as like a PDF, but I have tons of PDFs, that I teach, and that's I usually teach for my school. And pre-calc is all I want to do. Well, that's good. I love pre-calc too. Watch your channel for a long time. You help me with piecewise functions. Oh my God, you guys are adding so much. I can't keep up. No. So Samuel says, I've been watching your channel. Keep time piecewise. That's awesome. Thank you, Samuel. Give us some pre-calc. Taman, next time, please send it over to me next time. Taman, I'll be able to get to you. But I'm still struggling. What should I do? So far, pre-calc has been extremely difficult, but I'm still struggling. What should I do? Work with people. Get with your teacher. I used to go and see my teacher all the time and ask the students questions. So ask your teacher questions. Get with people you can do your homework and quiz with. Don't learn alone. It's not only boring, but it's hard to when you get stuck on stuff. No, Theodora, I'm not skipping your questions. I just don't have time to do any more questions. I'm trying to be really nice and answer as many questions as I can right now. But next time, please make sure you submit your questions into me in advance, and I'll try to do my best to answer you. And yes, Samuel, I can help you with the piecewise function. You'll just have to send it to me next time. Yes, Samuel, I keep on reading it. I'm just not going to do a piecewise function. You're going to need to send me over a piecewise functions. And Theodora says, how do you rewrite equations in exponential form? Please send me a question next time with a specific problem, and then I'll be able to do it. So next time, guys, on the live stream on the community tab, send it over, and I'll be more than happy to add it. All right, guys, I do apologize, but this live stream has gotten out of hand for me to be able to study or at least keep up on. So that is awesome, at least for you guys. I do appreciate that. Means definitely you guys are active in the stream, and maybe I might have to take a little bit more, set aside a little bit more time for these live streams. But for right now, I did not set aside more than 30 minutes, and I'm already behind. So I do apologize, guys. I am going to have to sign off. I do see you guys getting your questions. I will try to I will make sure I will read through as much as I can after this chat. And so I do really appreciate you guys coming in. I did see some of you guys helping each other out on the chat. I really do appreciate you guys doing that as well, because obviously me as one person, I'm not able to answer all of your questions here on the live stream. So I just really, really do appreciate you guys helping each other out. And I will sign off now, I will plan to be back next week, same time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I'll make sure I put in that post for your community chat. So for those of you guys that have questions that I did not get to, I'm not ignoring you. Just make sure you give me some specific problems, and then I can elaborate off the concept or the process off of that. But the more specific you can provide me, the better it is. So hope you guys have a great night, and I am out of here. Cheers.